It is the greatest moment in WA policing. Everyone will remember exactly where they were when they heard the news.
You couldn't make this up if you tried.
If a scriptwriter came up with the story of Cleo Smith, they'd be laughed out of town by every film producer, because it's just too far-fetched. A heartbreakingly cute 4-year-old is snatched in the middle of the night in one of the most remote places on Earth and disappears without a trace. It's a Liam Neeson movie. Then, 18 days later, at 1 o'clock in the morning on a suburban street in Carnarvon, a bunch of cops burst through a door and this happens.
And then she looked at me and she said, "My name's Cleo."
That's a movie trailer just there. And just when the world couldn't get more enthralled, the cops release a photo that breaks the internet. At best, we were expecting to find a traumatised child who's gone through God knows what. At worst, a body. Instead...
Cleo, my name's Cameron, how are you? Are you okay? We're going to take you to see your mummy and daddy, okay? Is that good?
we get a perfectly happy little girl.
And someone in handcuffs.
Few of us would be feeling a little sheepish about this today, I think. Didn't we rush out quickly to point the finger at the parents? We all quietly thought it at some point. Skeptics said it's too brazen, even for the worst kind of predator.
It appears as if it was opportunistic.
The family arrives at the blowholes in the late afternoon. There's maybe an hour and a half of daylight. They set up the tent, speak to nobody, and go to bed. Someone with a predilection for child abduction happened to be at that campsite in the middle of nowhere at the exact moment a family with a child arrives. He does a quick scope of the area, concocts a plan and carries out the most brazen kidnapping in the country's history. And he did it without anyone seeing a thing. We know that Ellie and Jake didn't clock him because if they did, there'd be a wanted poster with a composite photo of him everywhere. The chance of this kind of man being at that exact location at that exact time seems so unbelievably remote.
So the bloody keyboard warriors thought they'd solved it.
Yeah. The police went from saying we aren't ruling anything out to it wasn't them quite quickly. And then they really started ramming home the idea that the parents weren't in the frame at all. Absolutely categoric language. And not just the cops, even the Premier came to their defence. You don't do that unless you are 100% sure.
How'd they know?
Because Cleo's mother and stepfather would have been under surveillance from the moment it became clear this wasn't a kid who had just wandered off. Every word Ellie and Jake uttered was being monitored by detectives. Every sentence was analysed by psychologists. Their phones were tapped, every text message was intercepted, because that's how the cops do business. The police were waiting for them to say something or anything that was incriminating, and it never happened.
Yeah, you just cannot imagine what they've been through. So what do the cops do now?
They're probably working in two teams. One is tasked with interviewing the suspect, not just working out how and why he allegedly did this. They want to know if Cleo was his first. He's 36 years old. That's maybe 2 decades of activity that need to be x-rayed. And while detectives are talking to him, a second team of cops will be trawling through his history, putting a microscope on his movements to see whether he was anywhere close to areas where other kids have gone missing.
That press conference today will go down in history.
It is the greatest moment in WA policing. Everyone will remember exactly where they were when they heard the news. How often have you ever seen this?
Don't get used to this, guys, but just this once.
Good with you, Joey.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
The police have received calls and messages from cops around the world. The FBI, Scotland Yard, they'll be studying this operation for years to come. Everyone thinks the greatest moment for a cop is pinning the murderer or bringing down the cartel. It's not. It's finding the child alive.
We'd always hoped for that outcome, but still we're not prepared for it. So, yeah, it was absolutely fantastic to see her sitting there and in the way that she was. It was just incredible.
Goosebumps. What a day for Col Blanch.
He's the police officer who broke the news to everyone at 4 o'clock in the morning. Cole is officially Deputy Police Commissioner, but he's been de facto Police Commissioner ever since we learnt there was a place called Wuhan. Chris Dawson became State Emergency Coordinator early last year, and he passed the day-to-day running of WAPO to his deputy. We actually don't know much about this guy. apart from the fact he's the size of a block of flats. Have a go at him. It's like a brick with eyes. We know he hates bikies. We know he's had 2 pretty significant wins, heading up a force that found Cleo and also put cuffs on the guy who killed Nick Martin.
Where did he come from?
Col was appointed Deputy Commissioner in March 2019. In his first statement in his new role, he said, "I want to encourage innovation in solving crimes."
Sounds like the cops listened.
He came to WA 3 years ago to take up a position as an Assistant Commissioner. That's one step down from Deputy. He was AC for a division called State Intelligence and Command. Col was in charge of the dogs and the bugs. The dogs are the detectives that chase you down. The bugs are the surveillance devices they use to catch you saying stuff you shouldn't. Before that, he was in Canberra as Executive Director of the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. That used to be called the Australian Crime Commission, which used to be called the National Crime Authority. The ACIC draws together all sorts of intelligence, makes sense of it, and feeds it to the cops on the ground. It's a little bit FBI, a little bit CIA, and it was heavily involved with the search for Cleo. Col was given the ACIC gig by the Commission's chief executive at the time, a guy called Chris Dawson. WA detectives love Col because he backs them in and throws the kitchen sink at any problem. He uses techniques that are more spy agency than police force, and he gets results.
There's only one photo today that anyone cares about.
That's a win for the good guys. I'm Ben Harvey. For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.